When we talk about depression, what we're really talking about is, and some people find this surprising, but it's true, anger turned inward. So if I have a lot of anger about a person, place, or situation, and it's not safe for me to express that anger toward that person, place, or situation for one reason or another, I will often take that anger and turn it inward. Now, the most frequent experience of this that comes into my office is when someone has anger toward a parent or a spouse, or sometimes actually even one of their children, and because of concerns about how it will impact the relationship with that person, they take their anger and they point it at themselves. They point it inward, and they get really depressed. One of the first things I ever learned when it came to counseling depression, it was so helpful, was to ask a client, you say, okay, other than yourself, who in this world is the most impacted by your depression? The answer to that question is the answer to who they're angry at, almost all the time. In fact, I don't think I've ever had it not work. I remember one time I had a woman who was in recovery from methamphetamine addiction, okay? And I asked her the question, this is pretty early in my career. In fact, I think I had just learned this particular tool. And she said, the person most impacted by my depression is my son. And I was a little bit naive at the time. I didn't know exactly what to do. So I just said, oh, well, it sounds like you're really angry at your son. And she was horrified. Absolutely not interested in any kind of input or feedback that she might have anger toward her son. Her son was 12 years old, was just about to turn 13, had just started to date and kind of get outside the house and move along a little bit in life and kind of grow up. And then later in our clinical work, we discovered that she was really pretty terrified of being a mother, and also that her son had been a bit of an accident, and she was actually really deeply resentful about having to be a mom and having to drop out of college and do some of the other stuff that she had to do to take care of her son. And in fact, these were mostly conclusions that I drew on my own. Unfortunately, she didn't make it. She ended up relapsing, and I haven't heard from her since, and it's been a decade now. God bless her. I hope she's doing well. That's a good example of somebody who had depression, and the idea of really acknowledging to herself that she was feeling anger and frustration toward her situation as a parent was too hard for her. The idea of acknowledging that to another human being, and particularly to herself, was just something she couldn't stomach. She couldn't go there because it would mean that she was a bad mom. And in reality, the truth is, it's really normal for a parent to have a lot of resentment toward a child, particularly if they're a single parent and have gone through all the loneliness and pain and heartache that comes or can come, depending on the circumstances, depending on the community they're involved in, with single parenting. That's just a great example of depression as internalized anger. The other thing to understand about depression is if it's not internalized anger, if it's biological, because that's the other thing people ask me all the time, say, well, what about the biology component, Greg? It's biology too, isn't it? So, yeah, absolutely, there's a biological component of depression. But if it's biology and you treat it with medicine, if you give somebody who's depressed depression medication, it works. And it works really, really nicely. There's a certain segment of the population who can get over depression simply with some medication, maybe a couple dietary changes, and poof, they're good to go, no problem. However, for an awful lot of folks, the medication moves them in the right direction, sometimes makes them able to stomach therapy and to really do the work and maybe to look, in this woman's example, at what's really going on. But it requires some counseling and some understanding of yourself, some introspection and some realization that, yeah, I really am angry at my mother for making me take care of her when I was a kid. I really am frustrated at my dad because of the divorce when I was 4 years old. And lo and behold, I've been carrying that my whole life and I haven't even been aware of it. That happens sometimes. Hey, thanks for watching. If you like this, maybe think about putting it on your Facebook feed, or if you do Twitter, throw it up on Twitter. I'm pretty sure you can't post things like this onto Instagram, or you can subscribe to this channel on YouTube. Anyway, I'm glad to be here. Hope you had a great time. Hope you learned a little bit.